Welcome to LittleBigPlanet Karting Lesson 7, Part B. In Part A we looked at the basics on how to make cutscenes, but in this one, Part B, we're going to be looking at advanced things such as pathways, transmitters, and lots of stuff like that. So make sure you've seen the first section first, but if you have, let's get learning. Okay, so this is where we got up to in Lesson 7, Part A. We looked at sequences, and we looked at batteries, and we looked at cameras, and all of this works. It was made a really fun little cutscene, but as you can see from the wires and the batteries, it really is just a big mess. Which wire is connected to which battery, and if I wanted to tweak any of this, change any of this, copy any of this, it really is going to be a big hassle and a headache. So the first thing we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to streamline this into something which I think is a lot more manageable. Now, we're still going to use sequences, because sequences definitely are the way to go with advanced cutscenes, but rather than using batteries and having all of those wires stretched out everywhere in lots of different directions, getting all sorts of very confusing, we're going to use transmitters and receivers. Now, this is something which wasn't in LittleBigPlanet 2 and is new to the LittleBigPlanet Karting world, but I think they are very, very good and really save on making your levels look a lot clearer. And here they are. There's two of them: receiver, transmitter. Receiver and transmitter. And obviously the transmitter is the one that sends the signal, and the receiver is the one that receives the signal and then activates something else when it does so. And we use them just like the batteries or the cameras that we used in Part A of this tutorial. You stick them on the sequencer, and then you don't select them, but you hover over them and press right on the D-pad to extend them out for however long that you want to. And remember, each stripe on that sequencer can be specified to a different amount of time. Now, here is a little custom object that I have made, and you're welcome to grab this from the level I've uploaded or make your own. It's a receiver attached to a camera, which is attached to a nice bit of force field here, and in the corner there is a destroyer, and we'll be looking at that in a minute. But what's lovely about having this receiver here is that it isn't just connected to the camera. I can actually connect it to anything. So for example, if I wanted to have some speech and dialogue going on at the same time as the camera, it's really easy to do, because when this receiver receives a signal, I can activate as many things as I want when that signal comes in, and without having to have 3 or 4 wires crossing the entire level. And I could do the same thing with a rotator or a piston. I can connect the receiver up, so at the point when the sequencer turns on the receiver, it can turn on the camera, it can turn on the magic mouth, it can turn on this rotator that I've got here, all at the same time, completely wirelessly, and it's gonna be a lot clearer for me to make modifications with. Now, in the corner I have got a destroyer, and I've got a second receiver, and what we're going to do is at the end of the cutscene, we're going to send out a signal to all of the cameras that that will activate all of those destroyers, and will destroy all of those cameras and bits of force field that we've got going there, which will remove them from the level and help with things like lag and slowdown. And also, because these are actually solid objects, although they're invisible, they are solid. Now there is a way to make them not solid using pistons, but I think this is the simpler way of doing it. Now, the lovely thing about this is, of course, that it's wireless, and I can put this wherever I want. I can clone it as many times as I want, and I can modify when it's going to activate just by tweaking what's going on inside those transmitters and those receivers. So I'm going to put them in a similar place than I did before, and then what I need to do is go into the receivers and make sure that they are set to the same. So I've sent them to pink, and I'm going to call this one pre-1, which you do in that label there. And then I do the same thing to my transmitter on here. I set it to pink, I go into the label, and I'm going to call it pre-1. Now be careful, because it sometimes tries to add a space at the end when you press start, so always make sure you delete any spaces at the end using the square key before you save that, because pre-1 space and pre-1 without a space are not the same label. And it took me a while to decode that bug. I'm just going to make another version of the custom object that I've made here, and this time we're going to call it pre2. So it's very, very quick to do. Just going to set it up here. Change the label. So camera 1 is going to activate first. Camera 2 is going to activate next. And then I can do all the things that I did in the first tutorial, such as setting the transition time, setting the length of the transmitter, which will affect the amount of time that the camera is showing. But the most important thing, of course, is to make sure that your transmitter and your receiver are exactly the same color and exactly the same label, so you've got the right thing activating the right thing. Now, before we finish this and activate this, we need to add one last receiver, which is going to be the one that's going to actually end the whole cutscene, and I'm going to call this one pre-end. So no matter how many cameras or stations I have in this particular cutscene, so pre-1, pre-2, pre-3, pre-4, all that kind of stuff, it's always going to end with pre-end, and I'm going to wire that back to the scoreboard, because remember, the scoreboard needs something coming out of it and something going back into it if it's going to work correctly. You need to wire up the start of the sequencer, like I showed you in the previous tutorial, and then like I did in the first sequencer, instead of having a battery right at the end, I'm going to have a transmitter right at the end here as well. And when that one is activated, that pre-end, that is going to end the cutscene, but it's also crucially going to destroy all of those cameras, because every camera I put there has a receiver and a destroyer attached to it, so they will disappear. So I could even put cameras right in front of players if I wanted, because when that one triggers, it is going to go off. Now, there could be one small bug with this, which is if the player skips the cutscene. Because if the player skips the cutscene, that last transmitter isn't going to activate. So what I've done here is on one of the white spawn points, I've actually just added another transmitter, which will activate the pre-end as well. Now let's talk about paths. We haven't talked about paths yet. They are very, very useful. You get them from the tools menu on the far left, and you draw it out. You hold X and you pull it all the way across, and you can give it labels, you can raise them up and down, and you can basically send anything along a path: a cart, an object, a camera. You could even make a camera fly around your whole level if you wanted for a cutscene. And you give it a color, and you can give it a label to make sure that only the right thing you want is using it. But there's an important setting here at the bottom, which is cutscene. So you need to change the path to a cutscene type if you want it to actually work in one of your cutscenes. Now, incidentally, the fences are paths as well, and if you click edit edit path, and you need to click edit path if you want to change it to a cutscene path. You can also actually edit the fences as well, just by dragging the edge of them and pulling them in and out, which can be useful for track design in lots of different ways, for neatening up edges or shortcuts and things like that. So we've got pre-1, pre-2 and pre-3 in the transmitters. Now pre-3 we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to come down here to the movie spawn point, because remember, it has to be the movie spawn point if you want it to appear in a cutscene. And we're going to do something with one of our little actors. We're going to get our an actor brain, and we're going to get an expression brain. And if we go into the actor brain, one of the options is follow path, and we need to say that yes, it requires a tag. We need to make sure it's the right color, and we need to make sure it's got exactly the same label as what we set our path to, which was pre-3, because this is the third section of our pre-race cutscene. And we can then edit into here as well one of the expression modifiers. So when our driver is driving around, we can make him look happy, sad, angry, or whatever we want. We're going to go for very happy, and we're also going to give him a slight kind of looking around movement as well. So when he drives around, he isn't looking kind of bored and thinks he's looking very, very excited about the race. And then of course we need one of these receivers again, which we need to set to the right color. We need to make sure it has the right label in there, which again is pre-3. And again, the advantages of this modular system, which I use for my cutscenes, I can just use one receiver and connect it to several different things. Now, you would think that I would now put the camera in here as well. However, I haven't managed to get cameras working inside spawn points. So instead, what we're going to have to do is put this camera just on another object somewhere else. And there's a little trick we can do to get it working with that player's car. Anyway, now we can use the same. We just stick another transmitter, but the other advantage of using transmitters and receivers is we can set this this particular receiver to pink pre-3 as well, and that one transmitter will activate 2 receivers. But look, if you go into the spawn point itself, movie spawn point, you can give that a label, and I've actually called that label pre-3 as well. And if you go into the movie camera, you can set it to follow a cart rather than a gadget, and then set the label. Now if you set the label, that tells it which spawn point, which cart you actually want it to follow. And in this particular case we're going to do just the front player, but if you wanted to make sure it was player 1, for example, you just need to make sure it's player 1 spawn point has a particular label, and then the camera has the same label as well. And with all of these things put together, we've got pre-1 transmitter activates there, pre-2 transmitter activates there, and pre-3 transmitter activates the cart following the path with a nice expression with a decent camera. And with all of that stuff in mind, you have now got all of the tools you need to make some absolutely brilliant cutscenes using cameras, transmitters, actors, speech bubbles, etc, etc. There's so much you could do. And don't forget, of course, that there's the post-race box as well. So maybe rather than it being a pre-race race around the track, it could be a post-race celebratory lap if you'd prefer. The options are entirely up to you. Please give the video a like if you have enjoyed it, and do subscribe if you would like to see more. And if you do make any awesome cutscenes or have any questions, do let me know in the comments below and I will check them out. Take care, goodbye.